And it does look like we've got most folks, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kayla Clark, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I coordinate public programs for the University of Georgia Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant. So as an organization, we contribute to healthy coastal ecosystems and communities through research, extension, and education. And terrapins are a great ambassador animal for teaching about conservation on the coast. So I'm excited that you will get to meet several people who are actively engaged in conserving these animals. Before we get started though, a couple of quick Zoom logistics. You will notice that your video and your microphone are turned off, but we do still want to hear from you throughout the program. So the way you can interact with us is either through the chat box or the Q&A box. So depending on your device, if you're on a computer, the toolbar will likely be on the bottom of your screen. And if you click the word chat, you can type in your name and where you're joining us from. Looks like we've got someone all the way from New Mexico, as well as from close by on Skidaway Island. So I'm glad that you all are finding that chat box. If you have a question, you can also put it in our Q&A box, and you'll also see that on that toolbar. If you're on a phone or a smaller device, you may need to click the word more in order to find Q&A and chat. And if you're on a tablet, your toolbar might be on the top of your screen as well. So if you have questions for us, you can put them in the Q&A box. If you're answering questions that we have for you, you can put them in the chat box. And I'm curious who is in our audience. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll, and you should see a green box. And I'm curious, have you ever seen a Diamondback terrapin before? And you can check multiple if they apply. No, yes, virtually, yes in the wild, yes in an aquarium or other education center, and yes along a road. And we'll give you about 10 more seconds to get your answers in. I can see most folks have voted. We'll give you 5 more seconds. All right, perfect. We are going to go ahead and end polling and share results. So it looks like most people have actually seen a terrapin before, and mostly in an aquarium or other education center, although a mix of other answers as well. And then I'm curious, how many of you all have been to the following locations? So check all that apply. Have you ever visited Tybee Island, the Burton 4-H Center, Skidaway Island, the UGA Aquarium, or been to either a Diamondback terrapin release or to the Skidaway hatchery? Very cool. So I can see most folks have voted. We'll give you just a few more seconds to get those answers in. Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and end polling and share results. Very cool. So it seems like almost everyone has been to Tybee and Skidaway Island, and some folks have been to both Burton and the aquarium and the hatchery. So that's wonderful. So we're going to start off by learning more about the hatchery that's here on Skidaway from Carolyn McInerney. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and toss the ball over to her so that you can meet her and learn about the conservation work that she does.
Good afternoon, Kayla, and everyone attending. I am Carolyn McInerney. I reside here on Skidaway Island. And before I even start, I have to tell you a little bit of background here. This is the turtle, terrapin, who started this program that is now 18 years running. And this is Tess. When we relocated here on the island to a home on the Western Marsh and also abutted a golf hole, I was sitting on my back porch right here in that chair and looking out across the tee box or the green here. There happened to be 4 gentlemen there putting out, and I noticed this little varmint running across the green. She took a nosedive into that bunker right there and started digging. And I watched, and the golfers actually stopped and watched for a little bit, but then they went on to play. It took her about 20 minutes to dig and lay her eggs, and then she climbed back out and hustled across the green back into the marsh. That was the first terrapin I've ever seen. Now I've seen thousands of them. But anyway, she went back into the marsh. The next morning, I went out to take a look up. There she's running back in. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Okay, there she is. All right. Anyway, she runs back into the marsh. And the next morning, I went out and found her nest totally destroyed by raccoons. And that started me on a hobby, whatever you want to call it, where I sat there and watched this for 2 or 3 days and then decided that something had to be done. So, of course, I didn't even know what I was looking at. So I got on to Google. And of course, that is the source of all knowledge in the universe. And you Googled marsh turtles, and I came up with a lot of fascinating facts here. The diamondback is the only U.S. turtle known to inhabit coastal rivers, estuaries, and tidal marshland. Their habitat runs from Cape Cod to Corpus Christi, Texas. The terrapin gets its name from the raised concentric circles. And as we show close-ups of especially the hatchlings, you'll see how beautiful their shells are. And terrapins have no teeth, but believe me, they have very strong jaws that act as choppers. I have been chopped a few times with their choppers and it hurts, but they consume fiddler crabs and periwinkles and clams. They also have a life expectancy of about 40 years. They reach maturity, sexual maturity at 6 years of age. Their average incubation time, when the eggs are laid, it takes 60 to 90 days to have the hatchlings pop up. And a lot of that depends upon the weather, and the temperatures in the nesting boxes. And this I found very fascinating. The temperature in the nest determines the sex of the terrapin. If the temperature in the nest is under 45 degrees, we tend to get males. If it's over 85 degrees, we have females. Now, scientists believe this occurs kind of midway through the incubation period. So we don't know, looking at a hatchling, until they're about 3 years old, even whether they're male or female. Now, everything that comes in to lay eggs, of course, is a female. And the other thing that I learned, and which put me in touch with John Crawford, is that terrapins are a species of concern in Georgia. And this was caused by the fear that we were going to lose terrapins along our coast here, and they would become extinct because years ago they were all captured for terrapin soup. And as you all may remember, if you're old enough, you may have been in a restaurant where they had turtle soup on the menu. So Georgia decided to make them a species of concern. Now, some of the other states have not followed suit. You can still go to New York and go into some of the markets up there and find terrapins for sale. Now, I combed the 5 holes that the terrapins come in on our golf course here. I did that for about 8 years. I would go out in the morning, I would find the nest, dig up the eggs, transplant them into flower pots. The flower pots went onto my front porch, where I would then monitor them until they hatched. When they hatched, I would walk them out into the marsh and release them. In 2010, this is now 8 years after I've started, Skidaway Audubon, which is a group here on the island that is very much into environmental projects. They found out what I was doing and said, okay, we need to adopt this program to help us be certified by Audubon International as a cooperative environmental sanctuary. John Crawford, at the time, he was mentoring the superintendents here on implementing some of the requirements of the certification. So John and Chris Steigelman and I designed hatcheries, the nesting boxes. The club built them. They were placed in out-of-play areas on hole number 3 and hole number 8. And if you're not a golfer, believe me, out of play is important, because when the golfers get upset, we don't want that. We do everything we can not to upset the golfers. Anyway, each box measured about 6 by 10 feet, held roughly 70 nests. In 3 years, we outgrew 2 boxes, and currently we now have 8 boxes located at hole number 3 and hole number 10. At the end of the season, we actually empty all the sand out of the boxes, and we locate what we term sleepovers. Now, we have some of the hatchlings, when they hatch, will go around the perimeter of these boxes, and if they don't like what they see, they conquer down into the sand, and they don't come up until they're good and ready. Last year, we had Christmas hatchlings, and I think our last hatchling came in at the beginning of January, when we were getting all rid of the sand in the boxes. So in April, which is when they start coming back in, is the end of April. The last few days of April, we normally get our first female coming in to lay the eggs. And I call the female the girls. So I will refer to the girls as I go through this. But we start with fresh sand in the boxes. And as I see here, an optimistic attitude for another record season, because the season that just passed was our best ever. Now, this is John Crawford and Chris Steigelman and I figuring out where these boxes were going to go. This is the end result. These were designed and built, designed by all of us, built by the club. And one of the interesting things, John wanted to do a self-release so that when the hatchlings hatched in here, they could release themselves. We took this very small piece of wood here out and let the hatchlings go out on their own. Well, John and I were touring the boxes, and we saw lots of little tracks coming out of the box, and then they would disappear. They had about 10 or 15 feet out of this box to the marsh. What was happening, the crows were coming down and picking off the hatchlings as they left the box. So we thought, well, that's not going to work too well. So we put the piece of wood back in and closed it completely, and we put in what we call catch pots. So at either end of the box, there is a flower pot. I am really big on flower pots, but there's a flower pot at either end. So when the hatchlings come up, of course, they have no idea where they are, and they keep going around the perimeter of the box. And if they keep doing that, they get very frustrated, and that's when they'll dig back down into the sand, and we may not see them for another month or two. So we put the catch pots there. As they toot around the inside of the box, they fall into the catch pot, and then our volunteers 3 times a day during the hatchling season will go pull them out of the catch pots and release them. So it keeps them safe. We keep the sand in the catch pot moist and a cover on it. So during the summer, they don't overheat or anything like that. So they are very well protected. And then this is the second box that was built on hole number 8. And we had 2 boxes for about 3 years, and then we had to add. Now, this is why the boxes were built. This is a nest that was destroyed by raccoons. You can see a little bit of the footprints of the raccoons here, but the raccoons have a telltale sign that they've raided the nest because they leave all the shells behind. So can you picture them sitting there just breaking the shells? They consume the yolk and drop the shells. When the crows destroy the nest, they fly off with the entire egg. So we see the hole, we see their prints all around the destroyed nest, but they don't leave any evidence behind other than their footprints. Later on, we actually got attacked by fox too, so they leave kind of just a big mess. Anyway, as we started getting this more than just a one-person hobby, I had to get some volunteers to help me with this. And all the volunteers worked as sub-licensees under John Crawford's license to handle wildlife. John encouraged us to find a way to educate and engage other people. So get the word out, especially with young children, to give them an appreciation for some of the wildlife that is here on our island. But neither John nor I foresaw the growth of this hobby from one individual into here we are with 14 volunteers and with a total of right around 15,000 hatchlings that we have released so far into the marsh. So our thanks to Crawfish, he has been absolutely wonderful. He gets all kinds of calls from us when we have a problem with one of the hatchlings, and he is just terrific. So much of our success is due to John. And this is what John wanted us to do with this program. Just have goals of conservation and education. This is one of our girls just coming in, and as you approach her, she, of course, draws into her shell. And this, just to give you an idea of the size, the females will be about 9 or 10 inches long, but they can weigh 2, 3, some of them, I swear, are 4 or 5 pounds, but they are heavy, and they are loaded with eggs when they come in. So they come they cross out of the marsh, come across the fairways, will find the nearest bunker. They cannot dig in the grass. So when they come out of the marsh and they hit the fairways or even the sides of the golf holes here, the grass roots are too hard for them to dig through. So they look for sand, or they'll go into the pine straw in people's gardens, but primarily they go to these bunkers. And you can see her tracks wandering through here. It's very interesting to watch. As soon as they hit the sand, they start putting their nose down and they test the sand as they go along until they find a spot that there is. The other, we never been understand why they gravitate towards the rakes that are left in the bunkers. And I can't tell you how many turtles, like the next one, digging her nest underneath the rake. So Crawfish can't explain that to us either, but they are fascinated with the rakes that are left in the bunkers. Now she is starting to dig. You can see the dirt coming up behind her. Here, this is actually Tess. She has started, she's probably halfway down through her nest. The sand in back that is dark, that's where she has been digging. They dig the hole about 8 inches deep. The top of the hole is only about 2 or 3 inches around. And then as she gets towards the bottom, she excavates it a little bit wider so it can hold her eggs. So here she is digging. And here she is dropping her eggs. And it's fascinating to watch. They kind of rock back and forth. The egg comes down, they catch it in their back foot, and slowly they take it down into the bottom of the nest, cover with a little bit of sand. Then they come up, the other leg comes around, and she picks up the next egg, and she just rocks back and forth doing this until she gets however many. Normal nest size is about 8 eggs, but this season I think we had 6 nests that were 14 eggs. We even had a nest a few years ago that had 18 eggs, and we have no idea where that turtle kept all those eggs, but she laid 18 eggs. And then she starts covering up again. See how far back her legs stretch? It is amazing when they're running around the grass and the greens and things. You don't realize how long these legs are, but they can come out probably 5 inches in back of this shell, and they are sweeping this sand back into the hole. And again, she's rocking back and forth as she goes back and forth between the legs, pushing the sand in. And then here's this. Again, this is Tess. Anyway, you'll see the ruffled sand in back of her, and this is her back leg coming out here. They anchor their body with the front leg, so she is anchored and just shuffles back and forth. And then this is what's left. So when she leaves the nest, this happened to be fairly moist sand, so the nest really shows up well. But if the sand dries out, you'll notice the sand over here on the left is very dry. Hers is damp because she dug it up. As that dries, the only way we will see the nest is this little ruffle of sand that is left behind. And if it's too dry, we can't even see the scratch marks from her back legs, but we do find this little ruffle of sand. So when we patrol these holes looking for nests, that's what we try to find. If we don't see a definite mark like this in the sand, we will just carefully kind of walk through the bunkers looking for this little ruffle. One of our volunteers, Miss Patty, who is my number 1 volunteer, she eats, drinks, and sleeps turtles, and you'll meet her through more slides here. She goes out and at 6:30 every morning looking for turtles, and I swear she doesn't end until dark. But the education part that John wanted us to do, after the installation of the nesting boxes, we decided to explain the purpose of the structures. So we have signage all over this plantation golf course that informs the golfers what is going on. On the par 3 tee boxes, we post a sign that says, hey people, it is turtle season, so be careful of the volunteers out there. And we as volunteers on our golf carts we have flying a turtle flag and then a bigger sign that says Skidaway Audubon Volunteers. So the golfers know who we are and that, yes, we are supposed to be on the course, but our signs tell them, okay, turtle season has started. So watch out, please, and don't hit into us. So far, we have never been hit by a golf ball, but who knows? So to further our education part, we also started sponsoring what we call hatchling happenings. We started at hole number 3 on the plantation golf course, and then we moved to Sunset Park. And you'll see why. When we started, we would have maybe 15 or 20 people. The last hatchling happening we did at Sunset Park, we had 115 people there. So it has gotten out of hand. This past year, we didn't do any because of COVID. And if we can do the hatchling releases this summer, we are going to have to find a way to limit the number of people because it was just too crazy. Then during when we do these hatchling releases, it's in September and October. That's when we get the majority of our hatchlings coming up, and we try to have enough hatchlings at the release that the children can get one to hold. And as we go through, you'll see some of the kids, how excited they get. And it's kind of fun. We also schedule birthday parties. We've had a number of island organizations such as Kiwanis and the Rotary Club and such come out, and we do hatchling releases for them. We've been up to, John's had us up to the Marine Science summer camps with our hatchlings. So we have hatchling will travel if you need anything done next year or this coming year. Then we have a wonderful sign at Sunset Park, which will come up here. It's a 2-by-6 foot interpretive sign that gives you a lot of information about Diamondbacks. Now this sign is on the golf course, and one of the things we did, because the golfers see, we can't be everywhere during this nesting season. So if the golfers see a turtle coming in to nest, there is a telephone number here, and it happens to be my number. So they will call me and say, there's a turtle nesting on hole number 9. And I tell them if she has finished nesting, to take this basket and put it over the nest so that the crows don't see it and come down and destroy the nest. So that works fine, except one day I had a call, and it is a gentleman who said, oh, about 3 holes ago, we saw a turtle nesting, and I took the basket and I put it over the turtle. And I said, okay, you put the basket over the turtle? And he said, yes, isn't that what the sign said? And I said, no, but that's okay. Let me go find this basket and release my turtle. So by the time I got there, one of the other golfers that followed this group, I guess, figured out what they had done. So the turtle had already been released. And so I did dig the nest, but that's the only time we've had anybody capture a turtle for us. But the golfers are very, very helpful. And this is what it looked like. You can see tracks where she's come in, she laid her eggs, you can see her tracks going out, and the basket was now over the nest, not the turtle. So it is, we do appreciate the help that the golfers give us, though. They have really taken to this project. And this is what they may see when they're out there on the golf course. This was one of our busiest days. This is hole number 8. And we've got a turtle in the background. I'm not sure this little nest here is from the one that's leaving, or whether she's been trying to dig there. But we had a traffic jam. So they are coming across. This one has just started to lay or to dig. And during the turtles tend to come in on either side of high tide so that they can ride the water in. They don't have to walk through the muddy marshes to get here. They ride the tide in, come ashore, lay their eggs, and then they'll go back, and if they time it correctly, they can even get the tide going out again. But as long as there's water there, it's much easier for them to come and go. All right, so now they've laid their eggs in the bunkers. So now what happens? This is Miss Patty. This is the lady who is more into turtles than I am, but she is digging a nest here. This is early morning because the grounds keepers over there are waiting for her to get out of a trap so they could run the rake through the traps. So she is digging. This is what she ends up with in a flower pot. Look at that. She has 7 eggs. So now she will take those eggs and she will transfer them to the nesting box. Now here you see all these little sticks. I call them popsicle sticks. They're craft sticks. Every one of those sticks is a nest. So this is how we identify where the nests are. And Patty is transplanting now into the box. This is the stick that it gets filled out with the information we need, and tells us how long the hatchlings took to hatch and how many are there and everything. This is a stick. So we have the date the nest was laid, the circled number is the number of eggs. This is the site number. It's in box B, site 4. And this is the hole that she came in on. And we keep a ton of statistics on these turtles, so you'll see why all of these are important to us. Now, this is just more, you see all of our different volunteers here filling in their sticks to identify the nesting sites. Okay, now this gives you an idea of the size of the hatchlings. So they are only about an inch long. And actually, we've had some that I had twins, conjoined twins years ago, and they were each the size of a dime. So these hatchlings now, most of them are maybe the size of a quarter when they come in, but they are very feisty. Just great little creatures. You have to come to one of our releases and actually hold one and let them run up and down your arm. Now, this is probably one of the most beautiful hatchlings we've had. And it's interesting because out of one clutch, and the clutch is the number of eggs that are in a nest, this clutch was, I think, 7 or 8 eggs, but only 3 of the hatchlings had this beautiful markings, as beautiful as these. Most of them are a little bit duller than this, but she was beautiful. And you'll notice I've got her in my hand and she automatically heads for the marsh. These hatchlings, all the turtles that I'm not sure other turtles, I'm sure the loggerheads are born with this. They are born with a GPS system where they know where the water is. I can turn her around in my hand and she will immediately go back and head towards the marsh. And one of the things too is her shell is her fingerprint. So just as our fingerprints are unique to us, her shell is unique to her. And this is one of the other turtles in her clutch. And you will see the markings on this, even though they are very vibrant, they are different than hers were, the previous one. And then this is the plastron, which is the bottom of the shell. And you'll see how beautiful the designs are here. Now, the side is the egg. They are born. The majority of them, this is closed up in here. Some of them you will see, you'll see a bubble of egg yolk. And if the bubble is there, and our volunteers, of course, look at each and every hatchling when they pull it out of the catch box. If the bubble is there, we hold the hatchling over in the infirmary, which the infirmary is on my back porch. And it is just a large box filled with about 6 or 8 inches of sand. And we don't release the hatchlings until the egg is absorbed almost entirely, 99% into the shell. Then they will be released. So they may be in the infirmary for 3 or 4 days until the egg yolk is all absorbed. And this one you'll see, now this one would be released because it is 99% absorbed in. But notice the difference in the markings on this shell. Just beautiful terrapins, but each one unique to itself. So they are, you'll see later, we actually photograph the turtles and can identify each and every one of them that comes in to lay her eggs. Now, this is when we empty the catch pots, we put them in the top of the lid of the catch pot to take them out into the marsh to release them. So here we just had 4 turtles hatch and we put them in here and we'll walk out into the marsh and release them. And this one doesn't, they're getting a little anxious to be released. So they're trying to release themselves, and they are very agile little animals. Now this little girl was born this past season, and the volunteer who found her brought her over to me and said, we can't release her. She can't walk, she can't do anything. So I thought, all right, I will hold on to her for a couple of days and see. As you can tell, her shell is all misshapen. Her legs on the right side are long. Her legs on the left side are short. Her tail is coming out the side of her body instead of the back of her body. So this poor girl's out of shape, to put it mildly. But after a couple of days, she actually perked up, and I had her running around my back porch to see if she could compensate for the length of the legs on either side. And actually, she ran like the wind and could actually run in a straight line. How she did it, I'm not sure, but she managed. And while I've got her here, you see this little point out on her nose. That is her egg tooth. And these hatchlings, when they are first born, they have a little tooth on the end of their nose, and that's what they use to break out of the shell. And after about a day or a day and a half, whatever, that egg falls off. But she is I had just gotten her from the volunteer that found her, so she still has her egg tooth on there. But after, I probably kept her for a week. I made sure she could dig in the sand. I made sure she could swim, and called John Crawfish and told him what was transpiring. And he said, it sounds good, just release her. Mother Nature will take care of her. So she was released. And I hope in 6 years, when she matures and comes in to lay her eggs, I hope I see her again. I think she will be a very distinctive turtle, so I won't have any trouble recognizing her. So anyway, she is one of our handicapped turtles. Now, this gaggle of turtles, one of our volunteers this past year, she was on duty to go check the catch pots during hatchling season. She came up with 82 hatchlings from all the boxes. So we released the hatchlings in about 15 different areas on the western and eastern marsh. We have tried not to release large numbers in one area because the raccoons are extremely smart little animals, and we have seen them kind of waiting for at our hatchling releases and things. They kind of sit out there and wait for us to release the hatchlings. So we've stopped doing that to a great extent. And now we take the hatchlings and walk them all over the 5 different holes where they come in, but we also now release in Sunset Park as well as Sunrise Park, and in areas along the trails that are along the Western Marsh up in the plantation area of the island. So we're trying to get the raccoons to not devour all these hatchlings as we release them. Now this is where we started our hatchling happenings. So we started with very small groups. I have photos on these boards, and this is the big photo board. So we take the kids through the pictures and show them the turtle dropping her eggs, and here's the eggs in the basket. And then they love to come back and see their own pictures up on the board. And over here, we tell them about the hatcheries. Now, the young ones are at this point, this is on hole number 3 when we first started. So we turned around and we've got the young ones running all over the green. We have the one young girl pulling the flag out of the hole and running around the green. So, and they play in the bunkers. So it was getting out of hand, which is why we moved it to Sunset Park later on. But here we still have just a few kids. Now this is the catch pot. So they're watching me empty the catch pot, and they are here to release. So we found half a dozen or more hatchlings in there. And, you like this? This is to make sure you're paying attention. You can't see that all food must go to the lab for testing. He looks just like my black lab, but this is to make sure you're still awake and you're paying attention. So now this is one of the young girls holding her hatchling. We let the kids hold them gently. They get a kick out of when I tell them they have to be a turtle whisperer. This is Mom. Sometimes the moms are more excited than the kids are about the turtles. And this young family came to, I think, every hatchling release we did. They were there that summer. We also do adult releases. So the adults come, all the turtles, almost all have been released. We still have a body out there in the marsh. But one of the, here you go. This is Sherry Halderman. If you've never met her, this is Sherry. She asked me to do a hatchling release for her TLA people. So that started kind of a rage about different organizations would come, and we do releases just for one organization at, this is midday, they're on their lunch break. So they came and took part. But this is back to the kids. They are fascinated by the hatchlings. Now, if a hatchling will not put her head out or her feet out or whatever and just goes back into her shell, the kids get very frustrated. So I told them they have to be a turtle whisperer. And if you talk to the turtle in a very low voice and you talk very slowly, it is truly amazing. And all you people out there, try this the next time you're holding a hatchling. If they don't want to come out and be active for you, talk to them like that. And it isn't, the head comes out and the feet, and they wake right up. And the kids think they are magic. It is great. But this is Gracie. She is releasing Gracie. We tell the kids to name them. We even have races to see which turtles can get into the marsh the quickest. So we kind of make it fun for them. Now this is a little boy with his turtle named Bob. And we tell the kids that they can name their turtles, and in 6 years they can come back and maybe their turtle's coming back in. Well, the girls will name them, and it'll be titles of the princesses in Disney movies or something, and they're always fun and inventive. The boys come up with Bob all the time. There must be, and I'm not exaggerating, 60 or 70% of the boys name their turtle Bob. Now, what is the fascination with that name? I have no idea, but there are thousands of Bobs out in the marsh, and probably most of them are females, so that even makes it more interesting. But they have more fun with their turtles. The other fun thing I find interesting is you say to the kids, all right, let's go out and release. We're going to go out into the marsh and release your turtles. Okay, they're with me. You say to the adults, let's go out into the marsh and release, and they stand there and look at you like, you want me to go into the marsh? So, the kids are so much more fun. But they have no fear of walking out into the muck and releasing their turtles. And then we have a game. This is a photo I pass around, and I tell them to find the hatchlings, because it is amazing, as you all probably know, how quickly they dig down and disappear. So I took this photo and I pass it around, and I tell them, now you have to find all the hatchlings in this photo, and then there's a prize if they get the number right. So there are 6 hatchlings in this photo, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this one, you see his head here, and he is buried or half buried under this stick. So they always miss that one. And of course, half of them say this leaf down here is one. I say, no, that's a leaf. But anyway, they have a lot of fun, and we give prizes when they get it right. Now, this is what the releases look like now. Because we found that as the numbers grew, the children became hard to handle, hard to control. So I bought 50 turtle towels. They are beach towels with turtles all over them. And as each family arrives for the hatchling release, they are given a towel. And no one gets a turtle to handle, to name, whatever, until they are seated on the towel and they are listening to the presentation. So that has worked beautifully. And we now do 2 different presentations. None of my volunteers will handle the kids, so I do the kids presentation. And then about 25 feet or 30 feet away is an adult presentation. And so we get, the kids can ask their questions, and I can talk to them on their level, and then the adults get a separate hatchling happening over there. But the kids are so much better now because they have some place to sit. And if they're very little, like this little girl here, the adults will sit with them and hold the turtle, and the volunteers will kind of go through the crowd to make sure no one is mishandling. And the kids have actually been so very good and gentle with them because they are told to do that. But anyway, we have fun with them. Then this is the sign that we designed and had produced for Sunset Park to, again, educate people with what Diamondback Terrapin and why they come in. This little flag is the flag that we have on our golf carts to tell the golfers who we are. So all of that, if any of you live on Skidaway, please go up to Sunset Park and read through the sign. It has a lot of information about our project. So as citizen scientists, that's what we consider ourselves to be, what have we learned? Well, we determined the average nest size, clutch size is 8.5, a number that was previously unknown for the Georgia terrapins. We recorded the timings of the sightings to give us information of when the majority of the females come in to nest. We track the tide charts and our schedules. We have, when the schedules are done for each month, Peggy does the schedule. She marks on there when high tide is. Then we have 2.5-hour slots on either side of high tide. So there are minimum 4 volunteers, 2 in each time frame, out on the course during nesting season. And we found that during full moon and new moons, they come in large numbers. So we sometimes have all 7 of us out there trying to make sure we catch them all as they come in and retrieve the eggs. We have temperature logs that are inserted into each of the nesting boxes. So we know whether we're producing males or females. And we have just decommissioned one of the boxes because it is in so much shade that the temperature never gets above 85. And I mean, there are only so many males we need out there. So we are decommissioning that box. We have another box that the neighbor who owns the adjoining tree has agreed to let us trim it back so we can get more sun on that box. But we now photograph the carapace, the top, and the plastra on the bottom of every female. Jim Olson is one of my indispensable volunteers. He catalogs the photos and matches the markings. It gives us the data of where and how often she nests. So this year, for instance, we learned we had a total of 180 girls come in, and 102 of them were from past years, so they are returnees. And then we had 70 some newbies. And the newbies we can tell because they're smaller. They're only about 6 inches, 6 or 7 inches long. And but when they come out of the marsh and they hit the grass, they freeze. And the golfer will call us and say, there's a turtle here, but she's not moving. Well, we know she's not moving. Can you imagine? This turtle has lived in the ocean, or not in the ocean, in the intracoastal for 6 years. She comes out of the marsh, and here she is up to her knees in grass. She has a whole lot of trees above her. It has to be absolutely overwhelming to them. And so they freeze. So we go, we pick her up, and we bring her back to what we call the nursery. In between the nesting boxes, there's an area that's probably about 3 feet wide and 6 feet long. And we keep the sand in there very moist, especially on these very, very hot days we had. And we put them in the nursery, and they will almost always lay their eggs immediately. We then take them back to where they came in and release them exactly in the position they came in at. So that's how we are handling the new turtles that are coming in for the first or maybe second time to nest. Now, we also learned the hard way of protecting our nesting boxes. This is one where a fox and her family broke into the nesting box and made an absolute mess. So we then decided we needed to do hardware cloth on the tops and bottoms, which we have now done. This is one of Jim's turtles. We photographed top and bottom. Here's his log. On 5/26, she came in and laid 5 eggs. On 6/21, she came in and laid 9 eggs. And he identifies them because of their fingerprint. Now, projects we have supported. We have worked with Dr. Matthew Drawd at Armstrong and one of his senior students. She wanted to map the how far the hatchlings go into the marsh after we release them. So we had transmitters put on them. Number 1, we released within 3 days, eaten by a marsh rat. We found the empty shell with the transmitter still attached. The second turtle we released lasted 3 days, traveled about 6 feet before she was disappeared. Number 3 made her way back onto the golf course. She nestled in along the edge of the fairway, and she lasted about 7 days, and then she disappeared. So it was rather discouraging, which is why the normal survival rate for a hatchling is 1%. If left to Mother Nature, we have a higher survival rate than that. Here we are putting the transmitter on. Here she is being released into the marsh. This is Jennifer looking for her in the marsh. Jennifer came out at 5:30 in the morning, at noontime, and about 5:30 at night. If she couldn't make 5:30, I would go out with her big antenna and find the turtle if we could. And this must be the 5:30 because I look like I just crawled out of bed. Then other projects, this is a fascinating project that we just did with Dr. John Mers from UGA Athens. He came and he borrowed 30 of our hatchlings and he put them in tanks. He wanted to figure out what the effect of global warming is going to have on these terrapins. So 30 of them live down here in the water. Then they have this mesh thing to come up. They put them in different levels of salinity. And they found out the higher the salinity, the slower the growth rate. And the turtles were dehydrated a great deal of the time. So they would come up here, and this is fresh water, and drink and drink and drink their fresh water. So the statistics they came out with have been extremely helpful. Now, this is the result. 75 days later, we get them back. The top hatchling was in the least salinity, and you could see how much bigger this one got than the bottom one, which was in the highest level of salinity. So global warming is going to keep the hatchlings smaller for longer, which makes them more open to predation by the raccoons and things. John also, I have to go back quickly. He took us seining. There are 4 of us here, Patty and I, Jim and Margie. He invited us to go seining down in Jekyll Island with his crew. Well, what an experience. We were not much help and we never got invited back. How about that? But it was great fun and we learned a lot. And this is when they returned our hatchling 75 days later. This is his crew that came back with them. This is Patty getting pictures of the different sizes of the terrapins after the experiment. And then this is all the students. They decided they wanted to go out in the marsh and release them. They almost lost this young girl in the red shirt, was up to her thighs in mud. And then this is statistics. Just gives you an overview of how far along the project has been. In year 10, we had 47 nests. We released 303. As you can see, we go down. We have a couple where we go backwards because of what the club was doing with insecticides and killing off grass. Here's last season, our record 3,151 hatchlings released. in 2019, this is when we had temperatures up over, heat indexes over 100, and it was too hot for them to come in. So we had fewer nests. And if they did come in, they went into the gardens rather than the bunkers because the sand was so hot. And then 2017, we kind of went, we kept even with how many released, but we lost about 350 eggs between the fox breaking through the top of the boxes, and then we had moles coming in the bottom of the boxes. So how did we help? We continue photographing the girls to document how many times they come in, they come back to the same hole, and how many times a season they come in. We discovered the girls they don't like to nest in the rain, obviously, because the water just fills in their nest, and they do come in at full moons and new moons. We monitor the temperature. We lend support to other area biologists for research. We currently have a request from a UGA research scientist to do terrapin genetic samplings this coming season. So we are excited about that. We're going to help with that. But how can you help? One of the things, if you or any family members, friends have crab traps, would you please suggest that they install a BRD, which stands for a bycatch reduction device. This is a device that fits over the opening and it stops the turtles from getting into the trap, but it allows the crabs to get in. So it is wonderful to keep the terrapins from drowning in there. And I think I'm out of time, so I am going to go to the last slide. And our huge recognition by the club is they actually renamed the golf course for us and made it Terrapin Point. So that was our thanks for everything we've done. And this is one of my favorite turtles saying thank you. And thank you, Kayla.
Thanks, Carolyn. We appreciate it. And we are going to transition to Tybee. So I know that we've got one question in the chat box. So I'll just tell you the question, Carolyn, and then at the end when we do general Q&A, that way you'll have had some time to think about it too. Someone asked, I hope your panel will address how to safely and effectively protect nests. Raccoons got through our first cages and apparently a snake got the eggs in our last one as the mesh and wire had not been disturbed. So we'll circle back to that. But Carolyn, if you stop screen share, we're going to go ahead and introduce Nikki Papas, who is at Tybee Island at Burton 4-H, and she's going to introduce some conservation along roadways and some of the work that she's doing.
Okay.
Out that way. Thanks so much, Carolyn.
Okay, everyone, hi. Can you see my screen?
We can. You are still. We can still see all your slides on the side.
There we go.
So it's perfect. And I do just want to add. I know that typically our lunch and learns go until 1, but hopefully, folks, you saw the schedule that this goes until 1:30. And if you're able to stay a little bit after lunch, you can hear from Nikki, and then we'll also see a live terrapin at the end, and we'll wrap up at 1:30. So with that, we're going to toss the ball over to Tybee.
Yay! Hi, I'm Nikki. Like Kayla said, I'm the program specialist at the Burton 4-H Center. And fun thing about me, I work full-time and I get to be a UGA grad student part-time. So I want to talk to y'all a little bit about what I've been working on with my awesome advisor, Dr. Nick Furman. So y'all heard a little bit about me. I'm a turtle fanatic. Carolyn, I think I am your biggest fan now. You're awesome. That I didn't even know, but that's kind of how I got into this too. I was like, oh man, all these terrapin are getting hit on Highway 80. And I posed a question with my grad advisor, and then we kept rolling from there. So I want to go over a little bit about my first survey, some hopefully solutions, and talk to y'all a lot about my second survey. And hopefully everyone on this webinar can participate. And then maybe we can if we have time, go over some next steps. This is me at the Burton 4-H Center. That is my drawing of a Diamondback Terrapin. And if you can see at the bottom, that's one of our animal ambassadors. That's Cupid. He's a male. He's 3.5, and he has a really long tail. So Carolyn, when you were saying can't really tell till 3, that is so true. And he's a lot smaller than our female terrapin. So for my first survey I did was all online. It was called "Why Did the Turtle Cross the Road?" And it was just to gauge people's knowledge about turtles. And I wanted to know if people knew what the turtle crossing sign coming out to Tybee was even for. And surprisingly, a lot of people don't know a lot about turtles. So that makes our jobs really fun. We get to educate people. And then I was so happy people took the time to even fill out. This is the qualitative part of my survey. People responded and wrote some really positive things and messages for me. So I love that. And this, we're not going to dive too much into this today because it's a lot about the numbers, but this was the data telling me that people weren't super confident in their turtle knowledge. So, yep. And then this is our boy Cupid on the left. And on the right side is a hatchling we found at the Burton 4-H Center. And he's so small, the size of my thumb or smaller. So cute. Going ahead. All right. So sorry about that. Oh man, I'm having technical difficulties. Okay. So Highway 80, there are a lot of turtles or terrapins that get hit by vehicles in the springtime. And I've talked to a lot of different people, maybe some of you on the call I've talked to, about different solutions to help prevent terrapins get hit from crossing the road. So one of them that was brought up was potentially changing those signs to say terrapin crossing and maybe getting seasonal signs or seasonal flashing lights. So maybe a few hours before high tide and a few hours till after, because, you know, if you're not expecting to see a turtle, sometimes when you see a wildlife crossing sign, you kind of just ignore it, especially if you're a tourist and you have no idea when the terrapins are most frequently crossing the roads. And if you're a tourist or even some neighbors of Tybee, they think that the turtle crossing sign is for sea turtles. So a lot of misinformation out there. But maybe different signs would help. Some people have suggested culverts under Highway 80. And this would be good. And all of these solutions, there might be some pros and cons with. So one con would be potentially disturbing the pristine hydrology of the salt marsh around Highway 80. So we're not sure if that would be the best one. Widening the shoulder for Highway 80 would be a really great solution, not only for turtles or terrapins, but also for humans. Highway 80 is super dangerous, and there's not a place for you to pull over safely, even if you do want to stop and see or help move a terrapin across the road. So maybe starting there, who knows? And then a guardrail fence that would extend, it would be a short fence, extend all the way down and be buried into the ground, and then addition with the guardrail. So to prevent the terrapins from crossing the road. And then if they needed to get to other habitat, in theory, maybe they could, waddle along the fence or swim along in the marsh and go underneath the 2 bridges connecting the causeway. Also, maybe some more research out there would be great too. Like I said, the causeway is really dangerous, so it's hard for scientists to get approval to go out there. And then, our friends at the Marine Science Center on Tybee, some of them will do mortality surveys during the summer just so they can keep that data and the GPS, the hot spots of where the turtles are getting hit. But that would be really cool for that to be more public knowledge. And then also education and awareness. So talking to people about it, what can we do? I love the idea of having the kids involved with the hatcheries. So we're trying to get kids involved. Obviously, this is a dangerous place for kids. So maybe just raising the awareness for the kids and teaching about this in class. All right, and this is what I'm really excited about to share with y'all today. Like I mentioned, these solutions might not be the most perfect ones, but my advisor, Dr. Nick Furman at UGA, and I worked really hard on this second survey. It's called Wildlife Defense, and it's just to gauge people's perceptions on wildlife fences. That especially like if you're envisioning driving out to Tybee Island and you had a tiny little guardrail fence. So just your perception. It's not in the works, but maybe with a couple of combinations of those solutions, we could prevent terrapins from getting hit crossing the road. This survey's live, so you have until Friday to complete it. Is that tomorrow? Yes, it is. I think it's tomorrow. So please, please, please complete the survey. I would really appreciate it. This in my hand is Tilly the terrapin, and she was a terrapin that got hit on Highway 80, and she was lucky enough to get brought to the vet I take our animals to. And a little side COVID project for me this summer was getting Tilly back healthy enough so she could be released. So she got released in our marsh this past summer, and it was really fun to see. And I hope she can come back and lay some eggs there. That would be awesome. All right. And next steps, Dr. Nick and I are going to work to analyze and evaluate that data. We'll share the findings, let y'all know what happens, and then hoping that people like y'all can help raise awareness for this issue too, and we can make a positive change. Dr. Nick is going to come down and film his little nature show, hopefully this spring, so we can talk about it then too. And I would love for him to get some shots of the Skidaway project. That's just incredible. So hopefully we can arrange that. But yes, all right. And thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Marex. I love sharing turtle stuff, so this has been super fun for me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Nikki. And Emily is going to pull up a video of one of our terrapins, and we are going to put the terrapin on your screen, but we're still going to take some questions and answers for both Carolyn and Nikki. And just in case you missed it, that survey link that she shared, I did drop that in the chat box, and I'll also send it as a post email. It's obviously optional to participate in, but will be helpful for her to gather perceptions about that wildlife fencing out on Tybee. So our first question is any tips for how to get a county to put up a turtle or wildlife crossing sign? I've tried for years to no avail near me on a heavily trafficked road where lots of freshwater turtles cross and get hit in the spring. So that one could be for either Nikki or Carolyn if you have thoughts on that question.
I would suggest, sorry, you can't see me. I would suggest maybe calling your local DNR or Department of Natural Resources if you have somebody in that area. But that's a great idea.
Unfortunately, I don't work with ones that are crossing roads, so I haven't put a lot of thought into that, but I like the ideas you came up with, Nikki. I think definitely Route 80 needs something because of the number of turtles we lose there.
Well, wonderful. Thank you both for those answers. And Carolyn, did you have more to add on the question we got before we switched over to Tybee about how to safely and effectively protect nests?
Well, what I tell folks to do, if the turtle comes up and they see something laying in their backyard, and it's 9 times out of 10, it's a lagoon turtle here, I tell them to put, here I go with flower pots again, but I tell them to put a flower pot over the nest with a rock or something on top and leave it there for about a week or two to get until the scent of the turtle is gone so that the raccoons don't have the eggs for lunch or dinner or whatever. And that seems to work. And then tell them 60 to 70 days, keep an eye out there and you'll see the hatchlings. And I've had some property owners out here get so excited because the turtles have hatched and gone into the lagoons. So it's, what we do in the boxes is, of course, wooden boxes with hardware cloth, top and bottom, we have found is the only way to keep majority of predators out. Now, I'm not sure our boxes will keep snakes out, though. That's interesting that person had snakes. So we haven't had that problem yet.
Well, thanks, Carolyn, for that insight. And maybe this one for you, Nikki. What is the difference between a turtle, a terrapin, and a tortoise?
That's a great question and gets asked so frequently. The best way I can explain it, and maybe Carolyn can help me out, maybe even Emily too. So a lot of turtles will have beaks, kind of like Carolyn was mentioning. Terrapins have a really sharp, powerful beak. And terrapin it comes from a fancier word, terrapin, I think is how you pronounce it. And it means turtle. So there's a lot of different names that still mean turtle, and they come from different languages. So for example, there's a freshwater river cooter. That's still a turtle. And then tortoises, if you look at their mouths or their feet, they look like they have those big, trunks. They're like elephant feet, and they have it's not a beak on their face. So their morphology is a little different. Their habitats are different. What they eat would be different. And a lot of kids, when I talk to them about turtles, because they're like, well, how do we know where to put a turtle where we find it, or where to put a turtle if, it's out of its habitat? And the best thing to do is, if they're not in danger and if you're not in danger, you can leave them, the turtle or the tortoise there. But it's also important to know your different types of reptiles. And I would say that goes for snakes as well. So being able to distinguish between a tortoise versus an aquatic turtle is very important. Because you hear sometimes it's like, or I saw this meme where this person moved. They're like, oh, I saved this tortoise and this turtle and I put it in a pond, and it's a photo of this woman holding a tortoise, and you're like, no, they don't go there. So just being able to distinguish, okay, does it have a beak? Does it have claws or webbed feet? And then usually, land turtles, they'll have those, or land tortoises, I should say, have those big elephant trunk feet.
Thanks, Nikki. And that actually segues well, I think, into some of the backstory of the turtle that you all are seeing, the terrapin that you're seeing on the screen right now. And so I'm wondering, Emily, where you're at, are you able to share at all the story of how we got Pumpkin briefly?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we've had Pumpkin for a couple of years now, and we got her from someone who had really good intentions but couldn't give her the proper care that she needed. And she bopped around to a couple of other places, and she ended up with us. And a fun fact about my girl Pumpkin here is the reason that she is called that is because her shell has a little bit of a deformity along these outside edges that kind of looks like a pie crust. And that was kind of due to that accidental, not the best care that she received early on in her life. But now she's happy and she's healthy and she lives with us and she's doing great. You can tell she really loves the camera. Like Carolyn and Nikki were saying, a cool thing about her is we can tell she's a female for a couple of reasons. She's a little paler in color, and she's also a lot bigger. So we have two other male terrapins that are a lot smaller than her. Another cool thing that we get to do with her is different forms of enrichment for her feeding. So we'll usually put her in a separate tub where she can drink up some fresh water, which is also good for their skin, good for their system. And we'll place little pieces of fish and shrimp and gel food, which is all great nutrients for her. And we'll put that in a little tub with some grass, and she can kind of pretend to forage and hunt for her food in that way, which is a really cool way that we get to provide her for enrichment. But yeah, she's one of our educational ambassadors for Diamondback Terrapins. She's the best. I love her so much. But yeah, that's a little bit about her story.
Thanks, Emily. And yeah, I think that gets to the point that I think a lot of folks have good intentions a lot of the time, but it's important to note that both the work that Carolyn and Nikki are doing is underneath permitting. So you don't want to go, as someone who's just living on the coast, you don't necessarily want to be going out and taking turtles out of their natural habitat. Because a number of turtles that end up in various education centers, it's good intention, but usually the turtle is in the habitat that it needs to be in. We have time for just a few more questions if anyone has any. I know that we had one question from someone about volunteering. So Carolyn, if folks that are watching this are interested in getting volunteering, what's the best way for them to learn more or get involved?
Well, they can get on to the Skidaway Audubon website, which is skidawayaudubon.org, and say they'd like to volunteer, and then that gets sent to me. And right now we have 11 volunteers. I took on 4 more people last year, so we're about at our max now. But if COVID ever disappears and we all go back to taking vacations, I can probably add another couple of volunteers to our list. So if they're interested, get on the website, get it. I'll contact them and add their name to possible volunteers.
Fantastic. Thanks, Carolyn. And you might have mentioned this, Nikki, but for folks that might have young people in their life, is there any way that they can get involved with one of your upcoming contests?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me, Kayla. So we are we try to, especially during the pandemic, we've been putting on different contests so kids at home can get involved in one of our upcoming contests. It starts March 4th. It's an art contest, and the theme this year is safety for Diamondback Terrapins. So if you know anyone, any child K through 12 is eligible to participate. Again, it starts March 4th and it will go through April 22nd, aka Earth Day. So we're really excited. We've got prizes. We will be posting more about it on our website and Facebook and Instagram. And if you ever want to see some of our education animals too, we've got some wonderful terrapin as well, and they're just as charismatic as Pumpkin.
Thanks, Nikki. So in summary, for those of you that are watching, Carolyn talked about using reduction devices if you're crabbing. Nikki's got that survey that you can take part in to share perceptions and help inform maybe future solutions for collisions on the causeway going out to Tybee. There's a contest for kids. And then Carolyn, I know that we kind of cut short a little bit of your presentation. Was there anything else you wanted to add for maybe any boaters in the group or some of those other action items for people to take away?
Oh, well, again, the BRDs are important on the crab traps. Boaters, if you're out in the intracoastal, watch for these little heads popping up because we have a large number of the terrapins get hit by the boat propellers. So please just be aware they're there and keep an eye out for them. And again, crossing the roads. We've only had one mortality here on the road, and this one got run over by a golf cart. So we don't worry about road mortality too much here. But the crab traps, especially the ghost traps, which are abandoned crab traps. I mean, these traps have been pulled and they've got 40 plus dead terrapins in there. And for some reason or other, if there's 1 or 2 terrapins caught in the trap, the others tend to come along and say, geez, what's in there that that is of such interest? And they all just keep piling in there and they all drown. So please, if you have crab traps, catch or check them often, put the BRD on there, and just be mindful that the terrapins can drown in your traps very easily. So.
Yes, thank you for that, Carolyn. And for those of you that are driving out to Tybee or Jekyll or along any of those causeways, as it starts to get warmer, definitely driving slow and keeping an eye out for them is always good. And we did have a question that just came into our chat or the Q&A box. Have you tried setting up trail cams around frequent nesting sites to improve nest findings?
Is that to me?
I think probably because it's with the nesting.
Right. Actually, we have talked about that. We've also talked about putting up cameras that can catch the turtles coming in at night. We get about 40 or 50 what we call night nest, where the terrapins will actually come in the dark. And it would be interesting to, especially Jim and I, to find out if they are some of our regulars that just want to come in at night to keep safe. I don't know, can probably keep away from us. But we are thinking about cameras for inside the box too, to capture the actual hatching process. So we just need funding. And thank you, Kayla.
Well, thank you so much, Carolyn. And Nikki, both of you, we really appreciate that. And we are just about out of time, but we will send a follow-up email with some of those resources to continue learning more about the work that both Carolyn and Nikki are doing. And I also wanted to make a plug that, you know, what we're doing in our personal landscapes in the upland areas around the coast as residents impacts the water quality of the marsh habitat where these terrapins are living. So our next Coastal Stewards program will be on March 13th. It's a Saturday from 10 a.m. until noon. And it's the launch of our Coastal Georgia Rain Garden program. So you can join and just have it count as Coastal Stewards hours. This webinar counted as an hour and a half towards Coastal Stewards. But if you do go to this workshop, it also counts as the prerequisite for a program where you can get incentives to actually install a rain garden at your site. And that could be at a home, it could be at a business, an education center, anywhere where you kind of have space along coastal Georgia to install this kind of practice. You can also get involved with us with our future upcoming events or by becoming a friend. We really appreciate our friends in the audience that are watching right now. It's really helped us be able to continue to offer educational programming. You can connect with us on social media, and Carolyn or Nikki, if there's also links that you want us to share for folks to get involved with Burton 4-H or with the hatchery, we can send that out in the post email as well.
Great.
And with that, Carolyn or Nikki, any last words before we sign off?
Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you all for
hosting.
tuning in. And please give me a holler if you have any more questions. Okay.
Same with me.
Well, thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And we'll see you hopefully in March.
Thanks, Kayla.